Welcome to the Life Stuff 101 podcast, dedicated to sharing stories and insights to inspire you to always make your mental and emotional wellness a top priority. We talk to people who share their personal journeys and experiences, as well as to people who share their professional expertise. And there'll also be other times when we share personal tips and stories, which will hopefully somehow spark that aha moment for you too. Because we all have those moments when we think, I wish I had known that earlier in life. That's what Life Stuff 101 is all about. Our discussion today is for general information purposes and not meant to be specific advice. For personalized support and specific answers to questions you may have, please consult the appropriate medical or mental health care professional. Now here's your host who's on this wild adventure ride of life just like you, and yes, a real life person who's actually slipped on a banana peel along the way. Mental wellness coach and psychotherapist Mio Yokoi.
Hello and welcome. My name is Mio and you're listening to Life Stuff 101. Life Stuff 101 is a podcast devoted to sharing stories and insights to inspire you to always make your mental and emotional wellness a top priority. Today, you'll be listening to a really great conversation I had with Pearl Lee, who is an art therapist and co-founder of the Full Circle Art Therapy Center located here in Toronto, Canada. But I'm really grateful that Pearl has provided a more thorough description and understanding of what art therapy is. And I'll tell you, it certainly has helped me understand what art therapy is a lot better. It's my hope that there'll be some valuable knowledge and insights for you too, and perhaps you'll consider trying art therapy too. For me, it was truly very educational, and thanks to Pearl, I have a much fuller understanding of what art therapy is, and more importantly, how it can be beneficial for someone like me who has blocks. And I mean, when I say blocks, I mean like concrete blocks around the idea of creating and doing visual art. But right off the top, Pearl also shares a weekly practice that is part of her self-care routine. And be sure to listen to the end of our chat where she recommends her go-to resources and the one thing she'd wish she learned earlier in life. So here we go. Here's my chat with Pearl Lee. Thank you very much for joining me. I'm really actually excited to talk about your knowledge and experience around art therapy because it's not something that I know a whole lot about. But just before we get started, I wonder if there is a fun fact that maybe you could share with us.
Well, first of all, thanks for having me. And I think one fun fact I have is I dance Zouk. That's like one thing I use, to help with self-care. And yeah, I think that makes me fun.
Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Yeah, Zouk, it's like a Brazilian partner dance. It's really, I think the words to describe it is more like sensual. Do that like every Sunday. It's just like really beautiful for me to really like express myself and just enjoy the music.
Well, that's amazing. So is there a group with whom you dance with?
Yeah, there's actually like drop-in classes on Sunday. Yeah, and I take classes with the lady there.
Oh, that's really amazing. And I know that there are dance classes and dance groups in the city, but it's really cool to know that that's something that you do and it's something that is helpful for you.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely find that's where I can recharge for the week.
That's really great. Let's talk more about art therapy and again, like the experiences and your knowledge. Because like I mentioned, I don't know a whole lot about art therapy. And I think that I'm someone with sort of like perfectionistic tendencies. And because I don't consider myself to be artistic when it comes to drawing or illustrations, like that kind of thing, because I think that about myself, I've always shied away from even considering art therapy. So for someone like me, how do you think that art therapy could be helpful?
I think actually art therapy would be perfect for you because within like art therapy, it's really not about the end product or how it looks like. It's more about the process. So it's like through like the guided like directive from the art therapist, doing a little bit by little bit, first getting to know about like the different art materials, and then we can do like different directive together. But within that, it's like a practice of, just enjoying the process, being mindful about the material we use, like how we're using our strokes instead of focusing on the end product. So I think that would be highly beneficial, like perfectionism.
And I think that it's interesting that you mentioned it's not about focusing on the end product. And that's something that I'm a recovering person from focusing on the end product. I try to be now more about process and the one foot in front of the other. I think that's something that I'm working on. When it comes to art therapy for someone like me, though, where would you see the first step being? Because, the thought of even picking up a pencil or a paintbrush or anything like that has me sort of frozen up.
I think it's just the first step will be like trying out different art materials. Like maybe we can start with like pencils, just drawing like simple lines and shape. And then like maybe moving towards, something like oil pastels or chalk, like where we can play with like smudging the colors. And then after that, moving towards paint. But just really setting it up, we might start with a mindfulness practice. So setting it up is just accepting everything as it is, and then just really observing the process of it.
Right. So to focus on play and maybe also to start just with fundamentals, just draw a line or just smudge this thing. Is that the approach that you would take?
Yeah, just taking it like step by step, not thinking about it. Oh, I have to draw like a tree with like an elephant next to it. It's just just lines and colors to start off with.
Right, and I could see how that feels more welcoming or even possible for me, as opposed to feeling like there is some kind of artwork that I need to produce, or I will be judged for it or something like that. But so from a therapeutic standpoint, can you help me understand how this process works therapeutically?
Yeah, for sure. Art therapy, it's like a combination of psychotherapy and art making. So like different of our therapists, they practice from different therapeutic standpoint. So for myself, I practice from like a narrative therapy standpoint. And like one of the technique we use in narrative therapy, is externalization. And it actually translates very well with art therapy. Like the idea of it's, separating us as a person with like the problem we're experiencing, and by being able to express it and draw it out, you can like physically like visibly like see the separation. And when we see the separation, it kind of gives us more access to see like how we will what we would like to do with it, and then we can keep building on with it. So developing a deeper relationship with like all the thoughts and feeling that it's just like all jumbled up in our head. But when we can actually see it, that's where like, okay, this is like my access point, like this is what some of the action that I may be able to take after.
So there's something about externalizing externalizing internalized feelings and being able to have it outside of yourself, not just in words, which would be like specific maybe to more like talk therapy, that there's something more tangible or something more definitely visual. Would you say that's
for
right?
Sure. Yeah, for sure. And I think art therapy I like to say that art therapy is like marinating your brain with some really good sauce sometimes. It's like, when we have a more positive thought, we can give it that space for us to really connect with it. We can see it with the colors, with like the shape, and we can use, like visual image as something that we can draw on later on, when we maybe not feeling like so good. That's like that's a visual image that we can draw back on and say, okay, yeah, that's what I remember. And then when we have that visual image in our head, then we can also connect to how it feels like with our body sensations, like how does it feel like to be with that visual.
And it just occurred to me too, to have a visual record, like you were just mentioning, that where you might start in the process of art therapy, that what might be expressed artistically toward the beginning of treatment, you would be able to almost track maybe.
Yeah, for sure. And it is actually really neat. Like at some point we'll be able to line up all our artwork together to kind of see, like how we progress, and like seeing, like the relationship of how we feel with, like the original color that we use. How do we feel about it now?
Right. So I'm just noticing though within myself that I'm not quite sure it looks like for narrative therapy and the art therapy to work together. Can you give me a better understanding of how you use those two modalities together?
Yeah, for sure. So I think externalization, that may look like asking the client to express how anger or how like, different feelings look like to them. It could be expressed as like a animal, or can be expressed in a creature that they can think of. And then within that, that's where we're able to see like the separation, of us and like the problem that we associate with what we have. And then that it's like where we can gain an access. And on the other side of it, with narrative therapy, it's like really connecting to like, our values. And within that, it's also coming from like because we may not know the values we have off the top of our head. So by doing like a piece of drawing, like let's say about like how we picture ourselves to be, like our self-portrait, and then kind of building like a context within the piece of artwork, we may be able to like see like, our values a bit clearer. And then we can start like, that's where we can start like, reauthoring our identity.
Something very specific that just occurred to me is like this idea of, like whatever it is that we believe about ourselves, it is internalized. And even though you can maybe put words to it, it's maybe a much more powerful thing, or it's certainly a powerful thing to have a visual representation of a belief that someone might have of themselves, or as you had mentioned, the values that they may hold that they may not necessarily even realize that they hold.
Yeah, for sure. And in terms of like memory, because we remember things like, like visually better as well. So like, that may be able to help us, to draw like some subconscious thoughts that we have about ourselves easier. And I feel like with talk, sometimes when I'm like, especially, with our identity, like we've been talking about it and like thinking about it. So it kind of became a script sometime, of like when people ask you something and there's like a default response is, oh, I am this, that's why I do this. But with art, it kind of just gives it like a little bit more a space to be like, just like, like really sit with it. Like we can actually like, like express it and look at it from like a different angle. So like, be able to like maybe shift from the original like script that they always tell people.
I really like that because you're right. When we do think about ourselves and when we're thinking about the things in our lives, we do have a narrative, a script or a story. And just through talking, those things just maybe get regurgitated as opposed to trying to express or to express oneself in a different kind of a way might have a different kind of an access point to those values and beliefs.
Yeah, for sure.
Right. So I'm just curious to know, from your experience, what are some misconceptions that people have about art therapy?
I think with like the popularity of paint night and also like coloring book, a lot of people associate, art therapy with like those two. And also like, with social media too, anything to do with like an artwork now, it's always hashtag art therapy. Like I totally understand, that it makes sense. Like if we're doing art and it's like therapeutic, like what we call art therapy. But sometimes people think it's like that is it. And I kind of feel sad about that because it kind of puts a cap, on like, what we can actually achieve within an art therapy session. That's one of it. And sometimes people think we have to be an artist, it's only for artists to do art therapy, or that, the art therapist will be interpreting their artwork just to see through their mind. I think those are the common ones. And we still have a lot of people coming and asking, like about if it's like an art class, like it's like, yeah, what kind of techniques would they be learning? So yeah.
Yeah, I could see that, how there are like these limitations and in I think similar ways that we think about psychotherapy or talk therapy too, that people will often say things like, if I'm talking to a friend or a family member, like how is that different from actually seeing a counselor or a therapist? That I could see how people could really limit themselves to, if I have this coloring book that's supposed to be for stress relief, like that's art therapy, to that there is maybe not like a larger understanding, I guess, of how art therapy works. And I could see how there would be a need for you to have more of it, like for you to have to explain maybe, or to have messaging where it's like, no, like it encompasses way more than that.
Yeah, for sure. And I've been thinking more about, why therapy? Like, because it is true. I have heard a lot of people saying, if I talk to my friends, wouldn't that be like therapy? Because like sometimes like it may be like, like some similar question that they hear, asking, and then their friends asking. But I feel like it's really the piece of being like, have someone who's objective, and also like knowing the different like techniques, that we can help in the different theories, we have learned to help guide them through like, a more guided path instead of like different questions. And I feel like that piece is so important because like our friends and family may be, like they could be asking some similar question, but there's still like like a connection, like yeah, they're subjective, they won't be able to give, an objective guidance to what they're going through.
Well, one of the ways I think that I think about it, or even the way that I explain the difference between talking to trusted folks in people's lives, like friends and family, versus talking to a therapist or working with a counselor or a therapist, is that there's a difference in agenda. Right. And that we as therapists understand that the agenda in working with a client is to be able to identify what the challenges that they are facing and what they would maybe like to do about it, or to get on the other side of it, or to make changes and so forth. And that we're able to keep that agenda clear. And it's not connected to who we are personally as therapists, as opposed to folks who are maybe talking to their friends and family, as they should, if there are things that are going on in our lives, but that often there's this unknown agenda that people hold, which is, I want to be able to help, right? Like, I want my friend, or I want my loved one to feel better, and that in and of itself would mean that it's like, oh, I'm just trying to, maybe I'm saying things to make this person feel better. Feeling better and making changes could be very different things.
For sure. I like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm wondering, I guess just as a part B to that misconception question, what would you say are maybe the most frequently asked questions that you get about art therapy?
I think it's like they want to know more about like how it looks like, and then I think we also get different counselors asking us like how they can incorporate art therapy in their practice. I think those are like the more common questions we get.
So when somebody calls you, is there a consultation process that you go through with in your practice?
Yeah, we offer like a 15-minute free consultation, so they can get to know like the therapist a bit better, to see if this is someone that they can work with, and then we can book a first session from there.
And that 15-minute consultation, is that in person, or would that happen on the phone? Or
it can either be in person or on the phone. Some folks use better, if they come and just have a look at the center, they take a look at the room first before they like sign up for their first session.
And I think that is, it's always good to have like a full experience, right? Especially when somebody is walking into a situation therapeutically where it's like, oh, like this is different and I'm not really familiar with it. So to be able to see a space and the person's face and to get like a full experience of it, I'm sure, has a lot of benefits. Absolutely. But if you are doing a consultation over the phone, again, like how would you talk about the work that you do as art therapists in that kind of a consultation situation?
I think depending on, the first question I ask them, is what kind of support are they looking for, so then understanding more about what are they going through. And then like, depending on what they're going through, like, I can tell them a little bit about how art therapy can help. So like some techniques that, that comes to mind. And then, yeah, and that's where we'll go. Cause it might look differently, like with different people, like, someone with trauma, or someone who's going, with like anxiety, it might look a little bit different.
So often the consultation process would maybe go as someone saying, this is what I'm looking to get support around, and that you can maybe provide them with a sense of like what that would look like for that particular person and their challenges.
Yeah, so I'll tell them about, my therapeutic orientation and just telling them a little bit about it, and then seeing, how like the theory will matches, how I can help them, and then going through like, like the different ways, therapy can help that can benefit them.
Right. Then I'm just going to, take a little bit more of a turn toward you. Can you give me an understanding of how you developed an interest in art therapy?
Yeah, I think this started when I was in high school. So in high school, I went through a program called IB, International Baccalaureate. So we have to choose like 6 majors, and art was one of mine. And it was a 2-year course, where I was supposed to work on like my entire series, and I was actually very meticulous, in terms of like I was more into the design work at that point, so when I went into my studio, I was like, I had a ruler with me, I was like, measuring everything, and it was just kind of taking a little bit too long. But I think my teacher can also see that I was a little bit stuck in terms of my expression. So one day he brought in this gigantic canvas, like it was 5 by 5, almost the same height as me, and just asked me to just paint. And that was the first time I actually really worked with like oil painting. And as I was painting, I just was able to kind of like feel more of like what I'm actually feeling. So like to describe the painting is this gigantic painting with like red all around like the outside, and then within the inside it's like a little cord, that I can pull. And when I step back and actually look at that painting, I just realized I can really finally see, how angry I was at that time. Because there was like a lot of things, going around at home. But there was just also like, like so much about me wanting to be the good girl, like I'm not supposed to be angry. I'm not supposed to be mad. So I kind of was just holding in all these emotions, like still trying to go to school, just like acting like everything's normal. So within that, I realized, wow, like, like art was like, it was kind of magical, that I was able to see that. So I started crying and like just, but it's more like such a release, it's like, oh, like this is really how I'm feeling, like thank God I can actually see it now. And then after a while, I met my art examiner, and then she told me that art therapy is actually a career. So I was like, oh, okay. So later on, I decided to get into it.
That's really beautiful that you
Yeah.
came into art therapy, or your interest in art therapy came through your own experience of experiencing art therapeutically.
Yeah, and that's where it all started.
It's really lovely. I know that you and your co-founder is Lacey Ford at Full Circle
Yes.
Art Therapy Center. Yeah,
Yes.
and the thing that really stood out for me is that Full Circle is a registered charity. Can you tell me more about that, and maybe also the larger vision that you have for Full Circle?
Yes, for sure. So yeah, we are a registered charity, and our mission is to provide affordable mental services for like people in lower income. And right now we are at a space with, different art therapists working there who all provide affordable mental health services through art therapy. And then our bigger vision is really, to find, a good like funding foundation where we're able to like do this for free, so people can come in, like have access, to the mental health services without charge, and being able to, to tell people about, what art therapy is, and have people, experience this, from themselves. And I think that another bigger vision is like hoping to like turn this, I'm actually currently building like a mental fitness program for workplaces. So it's like incorporating art and like, with the mental fitness, like different mental theory, so that we can really bring this to like a larger scale.
And I really love the emphasis that you have on access, and also the thinking around. And I think on your website you mentioned preemptive mental health care, and I really love that is a focus that you have in around mental health. And it's my hope that also this podcast becomes part of that larger conversation. But can you tell me more about how you think about preemptive mental health care?
Yeah, I look at it as like mental fitness, like so really seeing, like us doing things that take care of our mind the same way that we do, of our physical wellness. So it could look like, like different art therapy courses, or like, like different like meditation. But I think the idea behind that is really seeing that, it's really helping people to build that inner resiliency. Because I think a lot of times people may think that, like mental health illness is not something that it will happen to me. People may think that, it's just only happened to some people. But the truth is that actually all of us are vulnerable to experiencing mental illness. It takes like just like a unexpected event to happen. So like being able to build those like inner resiliency, I find would be so beneficial, when different things like rises, in our life, we'll be able to like kind of know how to handle it. We know our resources, who to turn to, what can we do at that point.
Yeah, and I'm completely on board with you there. It's a belief I definitely have. And it is, I think, part of the challenge too is getting the message out there that mental health isn't something that you take care of when something happens, right? Or when something is to a point where it doesn't feel manageable. That part of overall health is about maintaining mental health on an ongoing basis. So I really love that it's something that you're focused on, and that you're also creating programs to support that. So that's really fantastic.
Thank you. Yeah.
Oh, I actually just wanted to ask, like in terms of, I guess it's going back around art therapy treatment, generally speaking, what does a treatment of, or I don't know if you can say typical. I hate when people ask this, right? Like when they'll go like, how long is this going to take? Or how many sessions is it going to be? Like, that's not, I'm trying not to ask that question, but what does a course of art therapy look like?
I usually tell my client, to get started with at least 6 sessions. So, because there'll be time, for us to get to know each other, for me to understand more about what works and what doesn't work with the client. And then after that, when we have built a good relationship, we can kind of dig into a little bit of the deeper things that they want to talk about. So I would say generally maybe 12 sessions, but I see I also like to see therapy as something that, we can just do it as long term. Maybe it's just a check-in, bi-weekly kind of thing.
I also think about therapy. I think it's shifted over time through my experience as well, that it can be for some people, and I think different people use therapy differently. And for some people, it is, I have this particular issue or this challenge that I'm trying to work through, help me through it, or to support me through it, and then to get on the other side of that. And then that could, for some people, be enough. And then there are other people who might come and go, based on what's going on in their lives. And then there are some folks who are engaged in the therapeutic process on an ongoing basis. And I'm certainly one of those people. It's something that I've been doing now for decades. But it's something that for me, it is part of my mental health hygiene to some degree. So I'm hearing that maybe the approach that you take is similar in that way.
Yeah, I think so. And I really like that you're talking about your own experience too, because I think there's also another stigma about people thinking therapists don't go to therapy, or that therapists, we have all our things together.
Well, yeah, that's exactly right. As though we have all of our crap taken care of, or we figured everything out. The way that I like to think about it is just like a human being, anybody else. I'm trained in a very specific way, to be able to support others, or for me to hopefully be able to support others. But also I am continually engaged in my own work. And one of the things that I think has been so amazing, as far as my own learning has been, is that there isn't a ceiling or a top of the mountain, that there's always room for improvement. And I think there was a time in my life where that was kind of depressing, there isn't this pinnacle or this place that I'm going to hit and that's going to be it. But now I think about it as the fact that I can endlessly grow and evolve, that's pretty exciting to me. But, I'll talk about that all day long, as you might notice. But I mean,
I share the same feeling as well, really just, so grateful that, there's actually not a ceiling, that I can continuously grow myself. Yeah. And I'm actually planning to hopefully I will actually start a blog series about, my journey with my art therapist. So in hopes for people to understand more about art therapy, but at the same time, breaking down that stigma, therapists, sees our own therapist as well. And I actually feel it's so crucial and so needed that this is actually part of our practice, that we're doing our own work at the same time, with our clients.
Absolutely. So, yeah. So it's that sense of we've walked in similar shoes, right? Or we've walked maybe in the similar path. We might be a few steps ahead based on the work that we've done, but it's not like we've figured everything out, and it's not like anyone has all the answers to everything, right?
Yeah, definitely.
So I think it would be really great if you start the blog series, and I hope that you can maybe let me know so that I can share it once you start doing that. That would be really great.
Oh yeah. Yes, definitely, I will.
Perfect. And just a couple more things before we conclude. And thank you again so much for your time today, Pearl. Just one thing. I was wondering, what is a go-to book or a resource that you would recommend for folks?
I think a go-to book I would recommend is this book called Originals by Adam Grant. Have you read that by any chance?
No, I haven't heard of it, actually. Originals.
So it's, original. So I just find it very empowering. Really, it's originals, how nonconformists move the world. But within that, there's different stories about, how people, how we start different things, stories about Leonardo da Vinci, him doing over like thousands and thousands of work before he made like the perfect piece. Or like Beethoven, he also did the same thing. Like he composed like thousands and thousands of songs, like before he was recognized, or one or two were chosen. But it was there has a lot of good theory there, or like good stories that's really motivating. So that's the book I always like to go to sometimes, when I'm feeling a bit disempowered, just through the page and just like read one or two of the stories.
Oh,
I think
that.
another like resources I would recommend is like to have like keep our own journal book. Whether if you like to just write, or you like, for me, I like to draw in it, but having like a place to kind of just record our thoughts and feelings, for the day, I find that very helpful.
That's really, really great. And so once again, it was originals by Adam Grant?
Yes.
That's fantastic. And I will include that as part of the show notes for people who are interested in checking that out. And because this is the question that's a core of why I started this podcast, what would you say is the thing that you wish you learned most, either in school or at an earlier time in your life?
I know I think leadership skills, that's something I wish I would have learned, in an earlier stage, and I think a lot of times when people see like leadership, they see like, oh, like it's that person who stands in front of a lot of people who talk, or is that person who like, like starts something. But I feel like there's like an inner leadership in all of us, but understanding more, like how we can lead our own life, I feel like that's very important. And that's something I wish, I would have learned earlier.
Right. What I'm hearing within that, and maybe this is just sort of my own take around it, is to have maybe a way for us to explore earlier in life what our own individual strengths are. And based on like understanding who we are as individuals and knowing where we can lead from our strengths, right? Like not necessarily sort of like this generic idea of this is what it's like to be a good leader. But the fact that we all, like you were saying, that we all have the potential to be leaders. But it's also understanding who we are so that we can know how to lead in the best way that we can individually. Does that sound about what you're?
Yeah, that sounds about right.
That's really great. So thank you so much for that. And lastly, where can people learn more about you and Full Circle Art Therapy Center?
Visit our website at fullcircleatc.com, or you can also give us a call at 647-245-3344.
That's great. Thank you again so much for your time, Pearl. I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Pearl today. My personal biggest takeaway from my conversation with her is how valuable it is to be able to externalize and be able to express our internalized beliefs and values outside of words that can help us gain more nuanced access to ourselves. Again, I'd like to thank Pearl for taking time and sharing her work and experiences with us today. And details about Pearl and the Circle Art Therapy Center and the resources she recommends can be found in the show notes for this episode, which is at solidwellness.org/Pearl. And thank you so much for joining me today. And I'm wishing you a great rest of the day or evening wherever you are in the world. And I will talk to you again real soon.
Thank you for listening to today's episode of Life Stuff 101. If you haven't already, please subscribe so that you'll be among the first to be notified when new episodes are released. Always be sure to check out lifestuff101.com for show notes and to be a member of Mio's Miracle Mob. Because as the wise modern-day philosopher John Bon Jovi once said, miracles happen every day. Change your perception of what a miracle is, and you'll see them all around you.